The rain had ended sometime before dawn, leaving the streets of Boston slick and silver beneath the fading clouds. Noah Russell stood by the kitchen window of his small apartment, staring down at the cracked pavement below. For 31 years, that view had not changed. The same brick buildings leaning inward, the same hum of buses from the main road, the same sense that life was always passing by just outside the window, but never coming in. On the table behind him sat a folded letter, still faintly smelling of antiseptic and paper dust. It was from the hospital where his father had died 3 weeks ago. Noah hadn't moved it since the day they received it. His father, James Russell, had been the kind of man who lived quietly but left traces of himself everywhere he went. A high school English teacher who'd spent 40 years guiding reluctant teenagers through Hemingway and Steinbeck, leaving nothing behind but dog-eared books and a mortgage Noah couldn't afford to maintain. The eviction notice had arrived yesterday, pink and final, the culmination of 3 months of missed payments after the newspaper where Noah worked as an editor had folded. His severance had barely covered the hospital bills. Now there was nothing left. No job, no savings, no home. Just the crushing weight of failure that seemed to follow the Russell men like a family curse. Noah's phone buzzed against the countertop. His twin brother's name flashed on the screen. Shane Russell lived in the same city but inhabited a different world. Construction sites and blueprints perpetually chasing the next opportunity. They looked identical but moved through life on parallel tracks that rarely intersected except in times of crisis. What now Noah didn't need to hear Shane's usual optimism about how things would turn around. Reality had a way of grinding down even the most determined Russell. He answered anyway. Shane's voice crackled with something that sounded almost like excitement. "You're not going to believe this, Noah. We've inherited a house. Uncle Robert's lawyer just called me. The old man left us his place in Cape Harbor." Noah's breath caught in his throat. Uncle Robert. Their mother's estranged brother, a man they'd met exactly twice in their lives. The reclusive relative who'd vanished from family gatherings after some long-ago argument nobody discussed. He'd lived somewhere along the Massachusetts coast, Noah recalled vaguely. A man of few words and fewer connections. 2 days later, Noah found himself standing beside Shane in the gray morning light, staring up at what could only be described as a mansion in decay. The sprawling colonial house in Cape Harbor rose from behind overgrown hedges, its white paint faded to the color of old bone shutters, hanging crooked like tired eyelids. A weathered flagpole leaned toward the sea. Grass reached up to the porch steps. The air smelled faintly of mildew and pine resin. Despite the decay, there was something dignified about the place, something that refused to die. The brothers stood in silence, their breath fogging in the chilled air. Noah felt a strange stirring inside him, something between dread and recognition, as if the house were somehow watching them back. A sleek black sedan pulled up behind their rusted Ford. Victor Harrington emerged, his tailored suit and polished shoes marking him as someone who had never worried about an eviction notice. His silver hair caught the weak sunlight as he approached, hand-extended smile too wide to be genuine. "Mr. Russell and Mr. Russell." Harrington's laugh was practiced empty. "I represent Coastal Heritage Bank. We've been managing your uncle's estate matters for years. I must say this is quite a white elephant he's left you. The taxes alone." His eyes swept over Noah's worn jacket, Shane's calloused hands. "I'd be happy to take it off your hands. Save you the trouble of trying to maintain something so clearly beyond your means. I can offer a very fair price. Cash, of course. You could both start fresh." Shane's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, a crack of thunder sounded across the water. The air shifted. Noah turned toward the house and found his gaze drawn to the front door, which seemed to tremble in its frame and as if responding to the sound. "Not interested," Shane replied, the words clipped and final. "We'll need time to consider our options." Harrington's smile didn't waver, though his eyes hardened. "Of course, but I should warn you, there are 2 months of back taxes due. The county gives owners 60 days to settle before foreclosure proceedings begin." His card appeared between manicured fingers. "When reality sets in, I'm just a call away." As Harrington's car disappeared down the winding drive, Shane turned to Noah, eyes bright with defiance. "Can you believe that guy acting like we can't handle this place? Like we should just give up before we've even walked inside?" Noah didn't answer. He was still looking at the house, at the way the morning light caught in the Salt Street windows. Without thinking, he moved toward the porch, drawn by something he couldn't name. When his hand touched the weathered door, it swung open with a long, low creak, though neither brother had touched the knob. The sound echoed across the overgrown lawn like a voice long unused finally speaking. The air inside was thick and still heavy with the scent of dust and abandonment. Noah stepped over the threshold, feeling the floorboards shift beneath his weight. The entryway opened to a curved staircase ascending into shadow. Faded wallpaper peeled in strips, revealing layers of older designs beneath. Flower stripes, forgotten eras, hidden behind one another. A large stone fireplace dominated the living room, its mantel carved with initials too worn to read. Sheets draped over furniture created pale ghosts throughout the space. Shane moved past him, pulling back curtains, letting light spill across the wooden floors in long rectangles. "It's huge," Shane whispered, his voice changing the air pressure in the room. "Must be, what, 6 bedrooms? Look at that craftsmanship." He ran his hands along the crown molding. "You don't see work like this anymore." Noah wandered slowly, trailing his fingers along the dusty banister. He noticed how the light through the salt-streaked windows fell in narrow bands, cutting through the gloom. He felt an odd sense of reverence, as if they had entered a church rather than an abandoned home. "It feels like time stopped here," he said softly. Shane, already calculating repairs in his mind, nodded. "Time stopped because nobody could afford to start it again. But we could fix this place up, make it worth something." They moved deeper into the house, footsteps echoing against hardwood and plaster. The kitchen still held dishes and cabinets, a coffee mug upturned in the sink as if someone had placed it there this morning instead of years ago. A calendar hung on the wall, frozen on November 1963. Upstairs, the floorboards creaked beneath their weight. A hallway stretched into shadow, lined with closed doors. Noah opened each one, revealing bedrooms with stripped mattresses, empty dressers, curtains dancing in the draft from broken window seals. In the last room, larger than the others, Noah stopped. Sunlight slanted through parted curtains, illuminating dust motes that swirled like constellations. On the wall hung a single black and white photograph, warped by moisture, but still intact. Shane, Noah called, his voice strange in his own ears. "Come look at this." The photograph showed a group of people in summer clothes laughing on a lawn that Noah recognized as the one outside. A tall man in sunglasses stood slightly apart, his face half turned toward the camera. The resemblance was unmistakable. Robert Lancaster, the 35th President of the United States, assassinated in Dallas on November 22, 1963. Behind him, partially obscured but clearly focused on his camera rather than the scene, stood a tall black man, his posture suggesting both pride and caution. "What the hell?" Shane moved closer, squinting at the image. "Is that really Lancaster's here?" Noah's mind raced. Their uncle's house had apparently once hosted a presidential visit, yet there was no plaque, no commemoration. Just this forgotten photograph hanging in a decaying room. He studied the black photographer in the background, standing apart from the gathering, a man whose presence seemed both essential and invisible to the moment being captured. Later, as afternoon faded into evening, the brothers sat on the porch steps watching the ocean turn gray in the fading light. Shane nursed a beer from the six-pack they'd brought, while Noah thumbed through a property assessment they'd found in a desk drawer. "The taxes Harrington mentioned are real," Noah confirmed, flipping a page. "But they're not as bad as he made them sound. If we pooled what's left of Dad's insurance money, we could cover them and have enough left to start basic repairs." Shane leaned back against the railing. "I know guys who could help with the roof and plumbing at mates' rates. This place has potential, Noah. Real potential. Harrington wouldn't be so eager to buy if it didn't." Noah stared out at the darkening water. "But why us? Why would Uncle Robert leave us this place? We barely knew him." "Maybe he knew you better than you think," a voice called from the path. Both brothers turned to see an elderly woman making her way toward them, a canvas bag slung over her shoulder. Her silver hair was pulled back in a neat bun, her posture straight despite her years. She climbed the steps with practiced ease, extending a weathered hand. "Martha Sullivan, I run the town library. I knew your mother Eleanor when we were girls, and I knew your Uncle Robert for 40 years. Her eyes, bright and clear, moved between their identical faces. "You look just like her, both of you. Same determination around the mouth." She settled onto the step between them, without waiting for an invitation, as if she'd sat there many times before. "Robert told me he was leaving you the house. Said it was time for it to have young blood again. Fresh eyes that might see what others missed." Martha reached into her bag and produced a bottle wrapped in brown paper. This calls for something stronger than beer, I think. She unwrapped a bottle of whiskey, pouring 3 fingers into the mason jars she also produced. When they hesitated, she laughed. I'm 78, boys. I've earned my vices. The whiskey burned, but Noah welcomed the warmth. So you knew our uncle well. Martha's eyes drifted to the house. Better than most. He was the caretaker here for decades. Lived in the cottage out back. The main house has been empty since the 60s, more or less. At least nobody's lived in it full time. Noah leaned forward. The photograph upstairs of President Lancaster. Was that real? Was he actually here? Martha's expression shifted, a flicker of something caution perhaps crossing her features. Oh yes, he was here. Several times in the early 60s. This house belonged to the Wallace family then. Old money political connections. They hosted private gatherings away from the public eye, very exclusive. And the black man in the photo, the one with the camera Noah pressed, Martha took another sip longer this time. Thomas Mitchell, one of the few black photographers allowed in those circles back then, had a particular talent for capturing people in unguarded moments. She hesitated. He disappeared after the assassination. Nobody ever knew what happened to him. The wind picked up, carrying the distant cry of gulls. The house loomed behind them, its windows like tired eyes watching their every move. Shane lit a cigarette, squinting at the roofline. You could turn this into something, he said, exhaling smoke that vanished quickly in the breeze. History tours a bed and breakfast, maybe. This place has stories. Martha's gaze settled on Noah. Some stories are better left untold, Mr. Russell. She stood gathering her things. But I suppose that's not for me to decide anymore. The house chooses its listeners carefully. As she walked away, disappearing into the gathering darkness, Noah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. Shane didn't seem to notice, already talking about contractors and permits. But Noah couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched not just by the empty windows of the house, but by something older and more patient than the building itself. That night, they stayed in the house for the first time. They set up sleeping bags in the living room, built a fire in the massive stone hearth, and ate takeout from the only restaurant in town still open after 8. The flames cast long shadows across the walls, making the draped furniture seem to move in the corner of Noah's eye. Shane fell asleep quickly, his breathing deep and even, but Noah lay awake, listening to the house settle around them. Every old building had its noises, wood expanding and contracting, pipes warming and cooling, but this place seemed to have a language all its own. Soft creaks that came in patterns like footsteps moving from room to room upstairs. The occasional sigh from the chimney that sounded almost human. Sometime after midnight, Noah rose and walked into the hallway. The moonlight through the window outlined his reflection faintly against the old mirror near the staircase. For a second, he could almost swear another figure stood behind him, taller, broader-shouldered, watching with quiet intensity. He turned sharply, but the hallway was empty, just a trick of light and exhaustion. When he returned to his sleeping bag, shivering despite the dying fire, Shane rolled over, mumbling, "You awake?" Noah stared at the ceiling, at the way shadows played across the cracked plaster. "Yeah, you still think we did the right thing, turning down Harrington's offer?" Shane chuckled softly, already drifting back to sleep. "Houses don't remember anything, Noah. People do." But as the night stretched on, the wind rose again, sweeping through the empty rooms. And for the first time since childhood, Noah wasn't sure he believed his brother. Morning arrived without fanfare, pale and thin, as if the sun itself was reluctant to rise over a house that had forgotten what warmth felt like. Noah woke with a stiffness in his neck and the unsettling feeling of having been watched all night. Shane was already up, moving through the kitchen with a notepad, making lists of repairs and materials. Noah made coffee on the camping stove they'd brought, the bitter scent a small comfort against the mustiness of the house. As he sipped from a chipped mug they'd found and washed, he gazed out the kitchen window at the overgrown grounds that sloped toward the distant shimmer of the Atlantic. Something caught his eye, a figure standing at the edge of the property, partially hidden by an oak tree. A tall black man in a dark coat, looking up at the house with an intensity Noah could feel even from this distance. When Noah blinked and looked again, the figure was gone. He mentioned it to Shane over breakfast, but his brother just shrugged. Probably one of the neighbors curious about the new owners. This is a small town. Everyone knows everyone's business. The morning was spent exploring the grounds. Behind the main house stood a small caretaker's cottage, presumably where Uncle Robert had lived. And beyond that, a boathouse at the water's edge, its dock rotted and dangerous. The property extended for several acres, bordered by stone walls overgrown with ivy and moss. By afternoon, Noah found himself drawn back to the upstairs bedroom with the photograph. He studied it more carefully now, noting details he'd missed before. The date stamped in the corner, November 17th, 1963, just 5 days before Dallas. The way Lancaster's smile seemed genuine, but his posture remained guarded. The other figures, men in summer suits, women in elegant dresses, all captured in that moment of laughter and ease, unaware of how history was about to change. But it was the photographer that Noah couldn't stop looking at. Thomas Mitchell stood slightly apart, his camera raised, watching the scene unfold through his viewfinder. There was something in his stance, an alertness, a tension that suggested he saw more than just a social gathering. Noah felt a sudden urge to know more. He pulled out his phone, but the service was spotty, barely 1 bar of reception. He'd have to go into town for research. As he turned to leave, something caught his eye, a small wooden trunk pushed against the wall beside the bed. It looked out of place, older than the other furniture, and simpler in design. He knelt beside it, running his hands over the weathered oak. The brass latch was tarnished green with age, but it opened with a satisfying click. Inside, the trunk was lined with faded red velvet and contained neatly folded linens that smelled faintly of cider and thyme. Noah carefully lifted them out, revealing what lay beneath a stack of vintage magazines. Lifetime look. Their covers showed the early 60s frozen in glossy perfection. Noah lifted them, carefully thumbing through pages filled with cigarette advertisements and articles about the space race. In one issue of Life, he found a feature on the president's summer retreats, with photos of Lancaster at various coastal properties. None were explicitly identified as this house, but one image showed a veranda that looked strikingly similar to their own. At the bottom of the trunk, pressed flat and preserved by the weight above, was a sealed manila envelope marked in elegant handwriting, "Property of TM November 63. The ink had faded to a reddish brown like old blood. Noah's hands trembled slightly as he turned the envelope over. It was heavier than it should be, thick and stiff. Something inside shifted when he moved it. He hesitated, suddenly aware of the weight of history in his hands. This wasn't just an old letter. This was a connection to a moment in time when the world had stood on the edge of change. He broke the seal carefully. Inside were several strips of photographic negative, curled with age but intact. Holding one up to the window light, Noah could make out reversed images, figures gathered by a white fence, a convertible parked on gravel, and in one frame a face so unmistakable it sent a jolt through him. Lancaster captured in profile, his expression unguarded and thoughtful. Noah Shane's voice called from downstairs, breaking the spell. "You alive up there, yeah?" Noah called back, still staring at the negatives. "I found something." When Shane entered the room a minute later, he looked at the open trunk, the magazines and the strips of film dangling between Noah's fingers. His eyebrows rose. "Old photos. They're marked with a name," Noah said quietly. "TM November 63. It has to be Thomas Mitchell." Shane whistled low. 63, huh? That's the year, isn't it, when Lancaster was shot? You think these are real? Noah nodded slowly. "And they've been hidden here all this time." They carefully spread the negatives on the desk near the window, using the light to examine them more closely. The images were small and reversed, but unmistakable Lancaster and his entourage at what was clearly this property. One frame showed the president standing on the lawn they'd walked across just hours ago, gesturing toward the water. Another captured him in conversation with a man whose face was turned away, their postures suggesting an intense discussion. "Do you realize what these could be worth?" Shane's voice had changed, excitement creeping in. Original, never-before-seen photos of Lancaster days before his assassination. Collectors would pay a fortune. Noah frowned. "That's your first thought. How much money we could make. Don't tell me you're not thinking the same thing." Shane gestured around the decaying room. "This place is falling apart. We need cash to save it, and these could be our ticket." Before Noah could respond, a car door slammed outside. They moved to the window and saw Martha Sullivan climbing out of an ancient blue Volvo, making her way toward the house with a canvas bag similar to yesterday's but larger. They met her on the porch, where she handed over the bag without preamble. "Some essentials I thought you might need. Towels, sheets, a decent coffee pot. That camping setup I saw you unloading yesterday was pathetic." Noah thanked her, then hesitated. Martha, what do you know about Thomas Mitchell, the photographer in that picture upstairs? Martha's expression shifted, becoming more guarded. Why do you ask? Noah glanced at Shane, who shrugged slightly. We found something, some old negatives with his initials. Martha was silent for a long moment, her gaze moving between them and then to the house behind them as if consulting with it. Finally, she sighed. Thomas Mitchell was one of the few black photographers with access to the White House press corps in those days. He didn't work for the big papers, they weren't hiring black journalists then, but he sold his photos to magazines, especially ones serving Negro communities. She sat down on the porch steps and the brothers joined her. He had a way of seeing things others missed. Little moments expressions when people thought no one was watching. Some said he had a sixth sense for being in the right place at the right time, or the wrong time depending on how you look at it. What do you mean, Noah pressed? Martha looked out toward the water. Mitchell was in Dallas that day, not with the official press pool, he was there independently. After the assassination, he came back here, stayed in your uncle's cottage for a few days. Then he disappeared. No note, no forwarding address. Just gone. His camera equipment was still in the cottage, but there was no sign of any photographs or negatives. And no one investigated, Shane asked. Martha's laugh was short and bitter. A black man goes missing in 1963 and you think anyone cared. The police report said he presumably relocated without notice. Case closed. The only reason anyone remembered him at all was because of his connection to Lancaster. There were rumors, of course, theories. What kind of theories? Noah felt a chill despite the afternoon warmth. That he captured something in Dallas he wasn't supposed to see. That he knew something that made him dangerous. Martha stood brushing off her pants, but that's all ancient history now. Water under the bridge. As she walked toward her car, she turned back. Be careful with what you found, boys. Some doors once opened can't be closed again. After she left, Noah and Shane returned to the negatives, studying them with new intensity. Shane wanted to take them into town immediately, find someone who could develop them, but Noah hesitated. What if Mitchell had hidden them for a reason? What if they showed something that had put him in danger? In the end, curiosity won out. They drove into Cape Harbor's small downtown, a quaint collection of weathered clapboard buildings facing the harbor. After asking around, they were directed to Green's Photography, a narrow storefront with a faded awning and windows displaying wedding portraits and senior photos. Inside the shop smelled pleasantly of chemicals and paper. An elderly man looked up from behind the counter, his hands stained with developer. Walter Green had the weathered look of someone who'd spent a lifetime by the sea, his dark skin creased like well-worn leather around bright assessing eyes. When Noah explained what they had, showing him the envelope, but not yet revealing the negatives, Green's expression changed subtly. You're saying these were shot in '63? You found them where? In the old Wallace place, Noah said, suddenly cautious. Uncle left it to us. Green's eyes widened slightly at the mention of the house. Well, if they're real, you've got something special. But film that old, you have to handle it right. I can try to make contact sheets, but no promises. They left the negatives with him, signed a receipt, and went for coffee while they waited. The only cafe in town was a small place called the Lighthouse, with windows overlooking the harbor and walls decorated with black and white photographs of Cape Harbor through the decades. Shane couldn't sit still, drumming his fingers on the table. Listen, if these come out even half decent, we've got options. Private collectors. Kennedy Library, maybe even a magazine, would pay to run a story about lost Lancaster photos. Noah stirred his coffee slowly. Or we could just try to understand why they were hidden. What if they're evidence of something? What if they're connected to Mitchell's disappearance? Shane rolled his eyes. Not everything is a conspiracy, Noah. The guy probably just moved on, changed careers. It was the '60s, people were reinventing themselves all the time. Noah didn't respond. He was watching a man across the street, tall, black, in a dark coat, who seemed to be looking directly at them through the cafe window. When a truck passed momentarily blocking the view, the man was gone. When they returned to Green's shop an hour later, the old photographer's demeanor had changed. He handed them a single envelope with a solemnity that hadn't been there before. They're delicate, he said. Some frames are damaged beyond recovery, but these are clear enough. Noah opened the envelope and drew out the contact sheet. His breath caught. There was Lancaster again, smiling on the lawn of what was unmistakably their house jacket, off sleeves rolled up. There was a reflection in a window that seemed to capture Mitchell himself, tall and focused behind his camera. And in one frame, blurred but legible, was the corner of a newspaper dated November 17th, 1963, just 5 days before Dallas. Green leaned across the counter, his voice low. "Where did you say you found these?" "In our uncle's house," Noah repeated. "The old Wallace place." Green studied him for a long moment. "Your uncle was Robert Russell, the caretaker?" Noah nodded. Green's gaze shifted to the contact sheet, then back to Noah. "I knew Thomas Mitchell. Not well, but I knew him. We were two of the only black photographers in the county back then. He was good. Too good, maybe." "What do you mean?" Shane asked. Green hesitated. Mitchell had a talent for seeing what others missed, or what others didn't want seen. He tapped the contact sheet with one stained finger. "Be careful with these, young man. Some images carry weight." On the drive back to the house, Shane kept talking about the possibilities, how they could authenticate the negatives, who might be interested in buying them, how much they might fetch at auction. But Noah barely listened. He kept thinking about Green's warning, about Martha's stories, about the figure he'd seen watching the house that morning. That night, they ate takeout in the kitchen, sitting on crates they'd found in the garage. Noah spread the contact sheets on the table, using books as paperweights to hold the corners down. He studied each frame, carefully noting the people in the background, the positioning of cars, the angles of shadows that helped place the time of day. "You realize," Noah said quietly, "that whoever took these was with Lancaster just days before Dallas." Shane shrugged. "So what? So what if he saw something? What if that's why he disappeared?" Shane gave a short laugh. "Don't start with conspiracy talk. The guy probably just moved away, like I said before. Or hell, maybe he drowned. We're right on the ocean." Maybe. Noah leaned back, still staring at the images. "But these were hidden. Someone wanted them kept out of sight. Or someone just forgot about them," Shane countered. "People move things, get packed away. Don't make this bigger than it is." Noah smiled faintly. "You really think this house has forgotten anything?" Later, after Shane had gone to bed, Noah stayed up with a flashlight, wandering through the halls. The air was still, but charged somehow, as if the walls themselves were listening. He found himself drawn again to the photograph in the upstairs room, the one of Lancaster and his entourage on the lawn. He compared it to the contact sheet in his hand. The same scene from slightly different angles. The same moment frozen in time. In the silence, he imagined the laughter from that day, the click of Mitchell's camera shutter, the low murmur of conversation. The photographer had been right here, standing, perhaps where Noah stood now, framing the world through his viewfinder, not knowing that in less than a week, everything would change. Noah lowered the flashlight. Shadows gathered at the corners of the room, deep and unmoving. He thought he heard Shane turning in his sleep downstairs, the creak of the old floorboards. Or maybe it was the house itself, settling, remembering. He sat on the edge of the bed until his eyes adjusted to the dark. The smell of dust and salt was everywhere, seeping into his clothes, his thoughts. He felt for the first time not like an intruder, but like a witness, someone chosen by accident to open a door that had stayed locked for 60 years. When dawn came again, he went outside, the contact sheet safely stored in his jacket pocket. The sea stretched out gray and endless. The air was cold enough to sting. From the porch, he looked back at the house, its white walls shining faintly in the early light. Shane appeared beside him, holding 2 mugs of instant coffee. "You've been up all night," Noah nodded. "I couldn't sleep. Because of the pictures? Because of what they might mean." Shane handed him a mug. "They mean opportunity. You'll see." Noah looked at him and saw in his brother's face the same stubborn determination that had carried them through every hardship: their mother's early death, their father's long decline, the constant struggle to stay afloat. But behind it, there was also hunger. Not evil, just the quiet desperation of someone tired of losing. He sipped the bitter coffee. "Maybe," he said softly, "but history doesn't belong to the highest bidder." Shane laughed. "Says the journalist, says the son of a woman who cleaned other people's houses her whole life so we could have a chance." Noah said nothing. The wind off the ocean gusted hard enough to rattle the shutters. They stood there a long time, each staring in a different direction. Shane toward the road that led back to town. Noah toward the sea that seemed to go on forever. Behind them, the house stood silent but not empty. It had begun to stir in small ways, the faint hum of air through unseen cracks, the whisper of memory brushing against its walls. Somewhere upstairs, behind a locked door neither had opened yet, something waited, patient as dust. The brothers did not know it, but the past they had awakened had only started to breathe. The more they searched, the more it would remember them too. The following week settled into a rhythm that felt deceptively normal. Each morning, the brothers rose early, though for different reasons. Noah spent hours poring over the photographs, enlarging details with a magnifying glass, sketching out what he called the geography of memory. Shane, meanwhile, made phone calls to contractors, to an antiques dealer he knew in Boston, and quietly to a man who specialized in private historical acquisitions. The sound of their separate routines filled the empty house, the soft scratch of Noah's pencil as he took notes, the metallic whine of Shane's hammer as he fixed loose window frames, the murmured ebb of the ocean through open doors. On the surface, it was almost domestic. Underneath, tension began to settle like silt in still water. Noah kept a notebook on the dining table, its pages filling with his tight, deliberate handwriting. He titled the first page, "The Missing Photographer," and beneath that, Thomas Mitchell, 1925 unknown. The story fascinated him, the idea of a man who had once been allowed into the inner circles of the most photographed presidency in history, only to vanish like a shadow when the nation's heart stopped in Dallas. Mitchell's name barely appeared in official records, just a few lines in the White House archives, credited on 2 photographs from 1962. After November 1963, there was nothing. The more Noah researched, the more questions surfaced. Why had Mitchell been in Cape Harbor in the days before Kennedy's final trip? Why were his photographs never published? And why had his name been so thoroughly erased from history? The envelope they'd found had been hidden carefully, not forgotten. That kind of secrecy wasn't accidental. It was protection, or perhaps guilt. Shane noticed the growing obsession with quiet irritation. "You're acting like this is some government conspiracy," he said one evening, tossing a newspaper onto the table. "Maybe the guy just quit. People disappear all the time." Noah didn't look up from his notes. Not people like him, not with what he saw. Shane sat across from him, arms crossed. "You're not hearing me. It doesn't matter what he saw. What matters is what we can do with it. If these photos are real, they were worth a fortune. We could sell just one and cover the entire renovation. You'd have enough to write that book you've always talked about. I'd have enough to start that business. Everybody wins." Noah set down his pen. "Accept the truth." Shane leaned back in his chair, smiling thinly. Truth doesn't pay the bills. They had had versions of this argument before, about money, about purpose, about their mother's endless struggle to stay afloat. But now it was different. Now they were standing on a fault line between 2 worlds, one ruled by ideals, the other by survival. In the days that followed, the house itself seemed to echo that division. Some rooms felt bright and open, warmed by sunlight that cut through the dirty windows. Others remained stubbornly cold, as if they were holding their breath. Noah spent most of his time in the upstairs study, reading through the magazines they'd found and comparing them to the negatives. Shane avoided that part of the house altogether. He focused instead on practical tasks, clearing debris from the yard, calling electricians, planning how the place might look as a rentable property. One afternoon, Noah came downstairs carrying a stack of papers. "Listen to this," he said. "I found an interview with one of Lancaster's aides from 1970. He mentioned an unofficial photographer, a black man, who sometimes traveled with the president but wasn't on the official payroll. He said the man had a habit of asking questions nobody wanted to answer." Shane didn't look up from his laptop, and then he disappeared 2 days after Dallas. No record, no death certificate. The aide said the Secret Service never even filed a report. Shane closed the laptop slowly. So maybe he ran. Maybe he saw something he wasn't supposed to. Or maybe someone made sure he couldn't tell anyone, Noah said quietly. The words hung in the air. Outside, the wind rattled the shutters, and for a moment it sounded like distant footsteps. That same day, Noah drove to the local library. It was housed in a converted Victorian home near the town square, its shelves crowded with everything from bestsellers to local history. Martha Sullivan recognized him immediately, her eyes brightening as she came out from behind the circulation desk. "Mr. Russell," she greeted him. "I was wondering when you'd find your way here." She led him to the archives room, a small space filled with the smell of old paper and salt air. If there's anything about Mitchell, it might be in the local paper files. The Cape Harbor Herald kept everything back to 1892. Hours passed as Noah sifted through microfilm and yellowed clippings. He found stories about presidential visits, charity galas, and local politics, but little about the man behind the camera. It wasn't until near closing that he spotted a brief article from December 1963, A single paragraph buried in the obituaries. Thomas Mitchell, freelance photographer, presumed deceased. Last known location, Cape Harbor. Survived by no immediate family. The date made his skin crawl. It was published exactly 2 weeks after Lancaster's funeral. Presumed deceased. No details, no cause, just a quiet erasing of a man's existence. That night, he returned home to find Shane sitting on the porch, phone pressed to his ear. He was speaking in a low voice, too quiet for Noah to hear the words. But when he noticed Noah watching, he quickly ended the call. Just a contractor, Shane explained, pocketing his phone. We're getting an estimate tomorrow. Noah nodded, unconvinced. He went inside and sat at the dining table, staring at the contact sheet of photographs. The more he looked at them, the more details seemed to emerge, like the faint reflection of a second figure in a window behind Lancaster, watching the scene unfold. He wrote late into the night, trying to fit the pieces together. The next morning, he drove into town and used the library's computer to publish an article under his own byline, The Forgotten Witness, Searching for the Lost Photographer of Camelot. It was a modest piece, just a digital feature on an independent journalism site, but it carried weight. He wrote not of conspiracy, but of erasure, the quiet way history decides who gets remembered and who doesn't. He never mentioned the negatives or where they'd been found. By evening, the article had been shared dozens of times. A few small history blogs reposted it. One email stood out among the replies, a message from a Harvard historian named Dr. Rebecca Thompson, who specialized in 20th century political media. If you truly have information on Thomas Mitchell, she wrote, I'd like to meet. There are things about his disappearance that were never explained. Noah printed the email and has left it on the counter. When Shane came home from the hardware store, he picked it up and read it silently. So now you're dragging professors into this, he said finally. She might be able to help us understand what we found. Shane folded the paper, his expression tightening. Or she might take everything and make you a footnote in her book. You think people like that care about you? They care about owning the story. She's a historian, not a buyer. Noah argued. Shane looked at him for a long moment. There's no difference. That night, the air inside the house felt heavier than usual. The temperature dropped, though the weather outside was mild. When Noah went upstairs, he heard something, a faint hum, like a radio left on somewhere. He followed the sound to the study, where it seemed to come from inside the wall near the old radiator. He pressed his ear against the plaster. There was no clear voice, just the rhythm of static, the whisper of something half-formed. When he moved away, the sound stopped. He told himself it was pipes, air pressure, anything logical. But later, lying in bed, he thought of Mitchell's camera clicking, freezing moments that shouldn't have existed. The hum returned, softer now, like a breath behind his ear. He turned over and saw Shane sitting up across the room, staring at the same wall. You hear that too, Noah whispered. Shane nodded slowly. It's this damn house. It creaks like it's alive. Neither spoke again. They sat in the dark until the sound faded, until sleep finally came, restless and shallow. In the morning, they found a package on the porch. There was no return address, just their names written in black marker. Inside was a plain envelope containing a printout of Noah's article and a single line typed beneath it. Be careful what you dig up. Some ghosts still have friends. Shane swore and tossed it onto the table. That's it. I told you this was a bad idea. It's probably a prank, Noah said, though his voice was unsteady. Some local who doesn't like newcomers, or someone who doesn't want this story told, Shane countered. Noah looked around the room at the framed photograph still hanging crookedly on the wall, at the dust motes drifting in the light. Maybe, he said softly, but it's already started talking to us. Later that day, while Shane met with a contractor in town, Noah took the negatives and locked them in a metal box he'd found in the attic. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching. The house seemed to hold its breath whenever he handled them, as if aware of what they contained. That night, after the house fell quiet, Noah opened the window of the study. The ocean wind rushed in, cool and briny, carrying the smell of rain. Somewhere below, a shutter banged once, then again, like a heartbeat. He stood there a long time, listening. The house had two voices now, his own thoughts, and the echo of the past rising through the walls. He didn't yet know which would win. The next morning, two men arrived at the door. They wore dark suits and neutral expressions, introducing themselves as representatives from the Lancaster Foundation. The taller one, gray-haired and smooth-spoken, handed Noah a business card that felt too heavy, too official. Mr. Russell, we understand you've come across some historical materials related to the former president. He said, his voice modulated to convey both authority and friendliness. We'd like to assist with their proper preservation. Ensure they're handled appropriately. Noah met his gaze steadily. How did you hear about them? We monitor these things, the man replied. Artifacts have a way of resurfacing. It's best when they're managed quietly. Noah felt a chill run through him. He thought of Shane's late-night phone calls of the contacts he'd mentioned. You've already spoken to my brother, haven't you? The man hesitated, the first crack in his polished demeanor. We're aware of Mr. Russell's inquiries, yes. Noah folded his arms. Then you know I won't be selling anything. These negatives aren't property, they're history. They belong in an archive where the public can see them. The man's smile didn't falter, but it cooled several degrees. I understand your position, but I must advise caution. Sometimes, when sensitive materials come to light, misunderstandings occur. Documents disappear. People's reputations get tangled in things they don't fully comprehend. I'm sure you wouldn't want that. Noah's heartbeat quickened. Is that a threat? The man looked mildly surprised. Of course not. Just advice from someone who's seen how these situations typically unfold. He handed Noah another card, this one plain white with just a phone number. If you change your mind, call this number. We can make this easy for everyone. After they left, Noah locked the doors and went upstairs. He had to hide the negatives somewhere safer than the metal box. Behind the fireplace in the study, he discovered loose bricks that could be shifted aside, a hiding spot his mother had once used to hide rent money from unscrupulous landlords. He placed the envelope there, sliding the bricks back into place until they looked undisturbed. As he worked, the thought of Shane handing over copies to strangers gnawed at him. It wasn't just betrayal, it was desecration. These images had been entrusted to the house, hidden away for decades. Now they were being treated like commodities to be bought and sold. By evening, Shane still hadn't returned. Noah sat at the desk in the study, a single lamp illuminating his notes. He tried to imagine Mitchell developing his film in some quiet darkroom, hands trembling as he realized what he'd captured, images or voices that could never be shown. Did he trust someone who betrayed him too? Or did he hide everything here, hoping someone like Noah might find it one day? The sound of a car pulling up outside jolted him from his thoughts. He went to the window and saw Shane's truck headlights cutting through the mist. His brother climbed out slowly, shoulders slumped in a way Noah hadn't seen since their father's funeral. Noah met him at the door, ready for confrontation, but something in Shane's expression stopped him. They knew, Shane said hoarsely. Before I even said a word, they knew about the negatives. They said they were part of an ongoing historical review, that if I didn't cooperate, I could be charged with possession of classified materials. Noah's stomach sank. What did you tell them? Nothing, Shane insisted, running a hand through his hair. I walked out, but they followed me halfway home. He looked at Noah, eyes wide with something between fear and anger. You brought them here, didn't you? That article of yours? Now everyone knows. Noah shook his head. I didn't name the location. Someone else must have leaked it. Shane paced the hallway, his footsteps echoing on the hardwood. They're going to come back. You know that, right? They'll take the negatives, erase them, make sure nobody ever sees what's on them. Then we need to get them somewhere safe, Noah said. A lawyer or that historian I contacted. Shane gave a hollow laugh. Safe. There's no such thing. Not with people like that. They argued late into the night, softer this time, but with more weight. Every word between them carried years of resentment, of divergent paths, of what they'd become and what they'd lost. Shane wanted to disappear, to take whatever money he could get and vanish somewhere far away. Noah wanted to fight to make the photos public, to find the truth about Mitchell, no matter the risk. They stood on opposite sides of the same truth, each convinced the other was blind. That night, Noah went out for a walk along the beach. The sky was a low, unbroken gray, the air heavy with mist. He tried to think of what to do next, but the sea offered no answers. When he returned, the lights in the house were out, except for a single one burning in the living room. Shane sat in a chair by the window, staring at the darkness outside. I've been thinking, he said without turning around. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's not about the money anymore. Noah hesitated in the doorway. What are you saying? Shane looked up, his expression unreadable in the half-light. Give them to your historian friend. Let her take them. Just don't tell anyone where the originals are until she confirms they're authentic. That way nobody can bury them again. Noah felt relief flood through him, tempered by suspicion. You mean it? Shane nodded. Yeah, I'm tired, man. I just want this done. The next morning, Noah packed the negatives into a box and prepared to drive to Cambridge for his meeting with Dr. Thompson. Shane helped carry the box to the car silent, except for the sound of their footsteps on gravel. As Noah started the engine, he noticed Shane standing back, hands shoved deep into his pockets. For the first time, his brother looked worn down, defeated by choices that had eaten away at his certainty. Be careful, Shane said. Noah nodded and drove away, watching his brother grow smaller in the rearview mirror until he disappeared around the bend. The house stood behind him, white and silent against the gray morning, keeping its secrets for another day. The drive to Cambridge stretched longer than the miles warranted. Each curve in the coastal road revealed the ocean, then hid it again a blue-gray presence that followed Noah like a silent witness. The cardboard box on the passenger seat seemed to grow heavier, with each mile its contents more dangerous than mere strips of celluloid had any right to be. Noah checked his rearview mirror, obsessively searching for black sedans, men in dark suits, any sign he was being followed. The morning fog had lifted, but a mist of uncertainty still clouded his thoughts. Shane's sudden cooperation felt wrong, a dissonant note in their lifelong symphony of predictable disagreements. Harvard's campus greeted him with red brick and academic certainty. Rebecca Thompson's office occupied a corner of the history building, its windows overlooking an inner courtyard where students gathered on stone benches. Books lined every wall, photographs of political figures from various eras watching from frames nestled between volumes. Thompson herself was younger than Noah had expected, perhaps 45, with sharp eyes behind stylish glasses and a no-nonsense manner that suggested she'd fought her way into a field dominated by men. She shook his hand firmly and closed the door behind him, shutting out the hallway sounds. I read your article, Mr. Russell. I've been researching Thomas Mitchell for my book on forgotten witnesses to political history. The fact that you've found actual negatives, her fingers drummed on the desk, a quick rhythm that betrayed excitement beneath her professional demeanor. If they're authentic, they're extraordinary. Noah placed the box on her desk, suddenly reluctant to release it. These aren't just historical artifacts. Someone went to great lengths to hide them, and now someone's going to great lengths to recover them. Thompson's expression shifted. You've been approached, Noah explained about the men from the Lancaster Foundation, their veiled threats, the warning note left on their porch. Thompson listened without interruption, her frown deepening. The Lancaster Foundation has a reputation for aggressive acquisition of materials that might complicate the official narrative. She opened the box carefully, lifting out the envelope with gloved hands. Mitchell's documentation has been systematically removed from most archives. His press credentials disappeared from White House records. His bylines were scrubbed from publications. It's as if someone wanted to erase not just his work, but the fact that he existed at all. She examined the negatives with a loupe, her breath catching. These appear authentic. The films stock the edge markings, all consistent with Kodak materials from the early 60s. And this is unmistakably Lancaster here, at what you say is your property. Noah nodded, watching as she placed the negatives on a light table. In the illuminated images, the figures seemed more alive, their frozen gestures caught mid-motion. Lancaster gesturing toward the sea, a group of men in serious conversation on the lawn, the unmistakable silhouette of Mitchell himself reflected in a window. Thompson made notes in a small book, her handwriting quick and precise. I'll need to authenticate these properly. I have colleagues in photography conservation who can... A knock at the door interrupted her. Her assistant, a young man with worried eyes, entered without waiting for a response. His voice dropped to a whisper. There are 2 men here asking for you. They say they are from the Federal Archive Division, but I've never heard of that office. Thompson's face remained neutral, but her eyes flashed a warning to Noah. Tell them I'm in the middle of a meeting and will be available in 20 minutes. Then she turned to Noah as the door closed. The backstairs exit to the service alley. Take your materials. I'll contact you through a secure channel. Noah gathered the box, heart pounding. Should I leave the negatives with you? Thompson shook her head. Not here, not now. Find someone you trust completely. Not family, not friends. Someone with no connection to you or this situation. Have them keep the originals safe until we understand what's happening. Noah slipped out through the service exit, emerging into an alley between buildings. He circled around to the parking lot, keeping close to walls, moving quickly without running. As he reached his car, he spotted two men in dark suits entering the History Building's main entrance. The drive back to Cape Harbor blurred into a haze of adrenaline and paranoia. Noah took back roads, changing directions several times, checking constantly for followers. His phone buzzed with messages from Shane. "Where are you? Did you meet her? Are you coming back?" But he didn't answer. Something felt wrong. The sudden appearance of federal agents, Shane's abrupt change of heart, the timing of it all. When he finally reached the outskirts of Cape Harbor, the afternoon was fading into evening. Instead of driving directly home, Noah pulled into Walter Green's photography shop. The closed sign hung in the window, but lights burned inside. He knocked, and after a moment, Green's weathered face appeared at the glass. Seeing Noah, he unlocked the door. "You shouldn't be here," Green said, glancing past him to the street before closing the door again. "Those men came looking for you, asked about the negatives." "Which men?" Noah set the box on the counter, suddenly aware of how tired he was. "Government types, or claiming to be, showed some kind of ID I've never seen before." Green's hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his glasses. "They knew you'd brought in old negatives, knew exactly when, asked if you mentioned Thomas." Noah's stomach tightened. "What did you tell them, that I'm an old man who doesn't remember his customers?" Green managed a thin smile. "I knew Thomas, not like a brother, but enough to recognize when his ghost is stirring." The old photographer paused, studying Noah's face. "You found something else, didn't you? Not just photographs." Noah hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Hidden in the house. Recordings from November '63. Green closed his eyes briefly. "That explains it then. Thomas was always recording. Carried a little Nagra tape machine alongside his cameras. Said pictures showed the moment, but sound captured the truth. The truth about what Green turned away, moving to the darkroom door." "I don't know," Thomas never said specifically, just that he'd heard something he shouldn't have. Something big. The week before Dallas, he was different. Jumpy, kept looking over his shoulder. After it happened after Lancaster, he shook his head. "He came back here, stayed with your uncle for a few days. Then he was gone." Noah followed him into the dark room where red safety lights cast everything in a bloody glow. "Do you think he was killed?" Green's face, half in shadow, revealed nothing. "I think a black man asking the wrong questions in 1963 had many ways to disappear. Whether someone helped him disappear or he chose to." Green shrugged. The result was the same. Silence. "I need a favor," Noah said. "I need somewhere safe to keep these, just for a little while." Green considered this, then walked to a supply cabinet. He removed several packages of photo paper, revealing a small safe built into the wall. "The combination's my mother's birthday. August 16th, 1901. He spun the dial, opened the heavy door. "Nobody will look here. Photography shop's the last place they'd expect you to hide photographs." Noah placed the envelope inside, watching as Green locked it away again. "Thank you." Green replaced the photo paper, concealing the safe. "Your uncle helped Thomas when nobody else would. I'm just returning the favor. Now go, and be careful about that brother of yours." Noah froze. "What about my brother?" Green's expression hardened. "He was here yesterday, asking about the value of historical negatives, about how to authenticate them for private collectors. Said he had a buyer interested in Lancaster memorabilia. Never mentioned you or Thomas or finding anything in that house." The betrayal cut deeper than Noah had expected. Even knowing Shane's materialistic streak, he'd never imagined his brother would go behind his back like this. He thanked Green and left, driving toward home with a hollow feeling spreading through his chest. The house looked different as he approached, darker, more forbidding against the evening sky. Shane's truck sat in the driveway alongside a black sedan Noah didn't recognize. He parked on the road, approaching slowly, cautiously. Through the front window, he could see movement, Shane pacing, gesturing. Another figure sat in the armchair, mostly hidden from view. Noah circled around to the back, entering through the kitchen door. He could hear voices now, Shane's familiar tones strained with frustration, and another voice lower and smoother. "All I'm saying is, we need to be reasonable here." The unfamiliar voice carried the polished assurance of practiced persuasion. "Your brother seems determined to turn this into something political. But we're simply talking about preserving historical materials in the proper context." Shane's response came quick and defensive. "Noah doesn't have them anymore. He took them to some professor at Harvard. But you made copies, didn't you, Mr. Russell? The smooth voice hardened slightly. That was our arrangement. Noah had heard enough. He stepped into the doorway of the living room. What arrangement? Shane spun around, his face draining of color. Noah, I thought you'd be gone longer. The man in the armchair rose slowly. Noah recognized him as the older of the two visitors from the Lancaster Foundation. Today he wore a lighter suit, but the same practiced smile. Mr. Russell, we were just discussing the unfortunate situation with your brother. It seems there's been a misunderstanding about the historical materials in your possession. No misunderstanding, Noah responded, keeping his voice level. Those negatives belong in a proper archive, not locked in a private collection. The man spread his hands in a gesture of reasonableness. That's precisely what the Lancaster Foundation provides. A secure, professionally managed archive that only approved researchers can access. Noah countered. After content is vetted for appropriateness, after inconvenient truths are filtered out. The man's smile tightened. Well, history is complex, Mr. Russell. Context matters. Raw materials without proper interpretation can be misleading. Shane stepped forward, eyes pleading. Noah, just listen to what Mr. Harrington's offering. Enough money to restore this place completely, to pay off Dad's medical bills, to give us both a fresh start. Noah stared at his brother, this mirror image, with whom he suddenly shared nothing but genetics. You were going to sell copies behind my back. Shane's face flushed. I was being practical. These people have resources, connections. They were going to come for the negatives anyway. At least this way we get something out of it. The revelation settled over Noah like ice water. Not just the betrayal, but the realization that Shane had never understood what mattered about this discovery. To him, Mitchell's work was just a commodity, a lucky lottery ticket, not a voice crying out from the past. Harrington cleared his throat. Perhaps I should leave you brothers to discuss this privately. His card appeared between manicured fingers. My offer remains open until Friday. After that, I'm afraid other avenues will need to be explored. After Harrington left, the silence between the brothers expanded like a physical presence. Shane paced the room, unable to meet Noah's eyes. You don't understand what you're dealing with, he finally burst out. These people have connections everywhere. Government, media, finance. They can make our lives very difficult, or very comfortable if we play along. Noah's voice carried a bitterness he had never felt toward his twin before. Did you even think about what those recordings might contain? About why Mitchell hid them? Shane threw up his hands. Who cares? It was 60 years ago. Lancaster is dead. Mitchell is dead. Everyone involved is probably dead. All that's left is the value of the artifacts. Noah shook his head slowly. No. What's left is the truth. Something people died to protect or to bury. The truth doesn't pay the mortgage. Noah, Shane's voice cracked with frustration. The truth doesn't fix this falling apart house or give us any kind of future. You've always been like this, so focused on principles that you can't see reality. The accusation stung because it contained a grain of truth. Noah had always been the idealist, the one who believed in justice over pragmatism, even when it cost him. His journalism career had stalled precisely because he refused to chase clickbait over substance. Meanwhile, Shane's practical nature had kept them both afloat through their father's illness, handling insurance forms and payment plans, while Noah searched for meaning in the tragedy. But this was different. This wasn't just about money or principles. It was about honoring a trust they'd stumbled into, a responsibility they'd inherited along with the house. I found the recordings, Noah said finally, in a hidden room in the basement. The men in the tapes, they were planning something connected to Dallas. Shane froze. What are you talking about? The revelation of the basement discovery had the desired effect. Shane followed Noah downstairs, tension momentarily suspended by curiosity. The basement air was cold and damp, smelling of earth and mildew. Noah led the way to the far wall where decades of renovations had created a patchwork of materials, original stone foundation, in some places newer concrete in others, and one section covered with wooden panels that didn't quite match the rest. I found it when I was looking for the electrical panel, Noah explained, running his hand along the edge of the paneling. There's a seam here that's too precise to be accidental. He pressed against the panel, and with a soft click, a section swung inward, revealing a small space behind the wall. Shane's sharp intake of breath echoed in the confined space. The room beyond was little more than a closet, perhaps 6 feet square, its walls unfinished. A metal folding chair stood in one corner, its legs rusted from years of damp. On a crude shelf sat an old reel-to-reel tape recorder covered in dust, but intact alongside several small boxes carefully labeled by date. Noah stepped inside Shane, following closely. "What is this place? I think it was Mitchell's listening post," Noah replied. Examining the setup, he could sit here with the recorder running, capturing conversations from above through the heating ducts. The old system carries sound perfectly. Shane picked up one of the boxes, reading the label. November 17th, 1963. That's 5 days before Dallas Noah finished. There are recordings from October through November, all carefully preserved and hidden. Shane's face had lost its argumentative heat, replaced by a stunned sobriety. "Have you listened to them?" Noah nodded, lifting the tape recorder carefully. "It still works. I had to clean the heads and replace a belt, but the mechanism is solid. These old Nagras were built to last." He threaded a tape onto the machine, adjusting knobs until the ancient motor hummed to life. Static filled the small room. Then voices emerged, distant at first, then clearer, as Noah adjusted the volume. Men speaking in the measured tones of power and privilege. "We need to be absolutely certain about the arrangements." The first voice was authoritative, clipped. "Once we're committed to this course, there can be no hesitation, no deviation." Another voice, smoother, almost amused. "The plan is sound. Dallas provides the perfect opportunity, maximum exposure with controlled variables." A third voice, hesitant. "And if there are complications, witnesses unexpected developments." The first voice again. "That's why containment protocols are already in place. Any loose ends will be addressed. Discreetly, of course." Noah stopped the tape. The silence that followed seemed heavier than before. Shane's face had gone pale, his earlier bravado evaporating. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. "Is that what I think it is?" Noah rewound the tape slightly. "It's a conversation about what was going to happen in Dallas, about contingency plans for loose ends." Shane ran a hand through his hair, eyes wide. That's not possible. The Warren Commission concluded that a single gunman acted alone," Noah finished. "Yes, that's the official narrative. But what if it's not the whole truth? What if Mitchell recorded something he wasn't supposed to hear?" They stood in the small hidden room, the implications expanding around them like ripples in still water. Whatever Mitchell had witnessed or heard had been significant enough to make him hide evidence and then disappear. Significant enough that 60 years later, men in dark suits still came looking for any trace of his work. Shane backed out of the room, shaking his head. "We need to get rid of this. All of it. Turn it over to Harrington, or the government, or whoever. This is way bigger than us, Noah. That's exactly why we can't just hand it over." Noah insisted, following him. "If what's on these tapes contradicts the official story, they'll disappear. Just like Mitchell did." The argument that followed was like none they'd had before. It wasn't about money anymore, or even principles. It was about fear versus responsibility. Shane wanted to wash their hands of the whole situation, to retreat to the safety of ignorance. Noah couldn't turn away from what they'd discovered, couldn't pretend they hadn't become custodians of a hidden truth. Eventually, Shane stormed out the front door, slamming behind him. Noah remained in the basement for a long time, listening to more of the recordings. Most contained mundane conversations, political strategy, campaign planning, personal gossip. But scattered throughout were moments like the first, where voices dropped to whispers and words took on double meanings. Dallas, arrangements, containment, loose ends. On one tape dated November 18th, Noah heard Mitchell's voice for the first time, deep and careful, speaking to someone else in the room. "They don't know I can hear them through the vents." Mitchell's words were clear, deliberate, as if he knew he was creating a record. "I've been documenting everything. The photographs won't be enough, they'll just look like social gatherings. But these recordings, if anything happens to me, look for the envelope. The negatives are marked. They'll prove I was here, that I witnessed this." Noah sat in the dark basement long after the tape ended, thinking about a man who'd sensed danger but kept documenting anyway. A man who'd hidden evidence instead of destroying it. Mitchell hadn't been running from the truth, he'd been preserving it, protecting it until someone could safely reveal it. That night, Noah couldn't sleep. The house seemed alive with whispers, with memories trying to surface. He prowled the hallways, listening to the subtle language of an old building, the creak of floorboards, the tick of pipes, the sigh of wind through imperfect seals. These weren't just the sounds of settling, they were the house remembering. In the study, he stood before the window, looking out at the ocean silvered by moonlight. The same view Mitchell must have had as he contemplated what to do with what he knew. The same decision point: reveal everything and face the consequences, or hide the truth and hope someone would find it later. Noah's phone buzzed. A text from Shane. "Don't do anything until I get back. We need to talk. I have a plan." The message carried an undercurrent of urgency that Noah didn't trust. Shane had already tried to go behind his back once. What was stopping him from doing it again? From making his own deal with Harrington, or the men claiming to be federal agents? Noah had to move quickly. He gathered the tape recorder and all the boxes of recordings, carrying them upstairs. He packaged them carefully in a waterproof container, then hid it in the space behind the fireplace alongside the original negatives he'd retrieved from Green's safe earlier that day. It wasn't a permanent solution, but it would keep the evidence safe until he could figure out his next move. As dawn broke over the Atlantic, Noah made a decision. He drove back into Cape Harbor to the public library that wouldn't open for hours. Martha Sullivan had given him a key weeks ago, trusting him to use the research room responsibly. Now he used it to let himself in, moving through the darkened building to the ancient computer that served as the library's public terminal. Working quickly, he wrote an article that detailed everything they'd found. The photographs, the recordings, Mitchell's disappearance after the assassination. He included transcripts of the most damning conversations, from the tape's descriptions of the negatives and his own analysis connecting the evidence. When it was finished, he saved it to a thumb drive but didn't publish it. Instead, he emailed the file to Dr. Thompson and to himself with instructions that it be released if anything happened to him. It wasn't paranoia if they really were watching. And the men from the Lancaster Foundation, the supposed federal agents, the warning note on their porch, all suggested that powerful forces had been alerted to their discovery. Forces that had successfully buried the truth for 60 years and wouldn't hesitate to do so again. As he drove back to the house, Noah noticed a black sedan parked down the road just out of sight from the driveway. The same model Harrington had driven. He kept going, circling around to approach from another direction, parking behind the boathouse where his car wouldn't be visible from the road. The house was silent when he entered. No sign of Shane's return. Noah checked his hiding place behind the fireplace, relieved to find the package undisturbed. Then he went room by room, searching for any indication that someone had been inside while he was gone. Nothing seemed out of place, yet the air felt different, as if the house was holding its breath in anticipation. In the kitchen, he made coffee and tried to plan his next move. Thompson hadn't responded to his email yet. Green might provide temporary sanctuary for the materials, but that was just delaying the inevitable confrontation. What Noah needed was a way to protect the evidence permanently, to ensure it reached the public, regardless of what happened to him. The sound of tires on gravel interrupted his thoughts. Noah moved to the window, expecting to see Shane's truck. Instead, the black sedan from down the road had pulled into the driveway. Two men emerged, the same visitors who'd identified themselves as Lancaster Foundation representatives days earlier. Noah retreated to the study, watching from behind curtains as they approached the front door. They knocked, waited, then knocked again, more insistently. When no one answered, they exchanged words Noah couldn't hear. Then the older man, Harrington, gestured toward the back of the house. They separated, one moving toward the kitchen door, the other circling toward the sunroom entrance. They were coming in, whether he answered or not. Noah moved quickly, grabbing his phone and keys. He needed to get out to reach the hidden materials before they did. But as he started for the stairs, he heard the unmistakable sound of the kitchen door opening. They were already inside. Noah ducked into a small hall closet, pulling the door nearly closed, leaving just enough space to see into the hallway. Through the crack, he watched as Harrington moved methodically through the first-floor checking rooms, with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. The second man called from the kitchen. "No sign of anyone, but both cars are here. The Russell brothers should be home." Harrington's response carried easily in the quiet house. "Check upstairs. I'll take the basement. Remember, we're looking for recordings, not just photographs." Sources indicate Mitchell had audio evidence as well. Noah's breath caught. Sources? Someone had told them about the tapes, someone who knew what he and Shane had found. The list of people with that information was very short. The second man climbed the stairs while Harrington disappeared toward the basement. Noah waited until both were out of sight, then slipped from the closet and moved silently toward the study. He had seconds, maybe a minute, before they realized he was home. The fireplace loomed before him, its bricks cool to the touch, as he quickly removed the ones concealing his hiding place. He retrieved the package, tucking it under his arm, then replaced the bricks as best he could. Not perfect, but it might delay discovery. He was halfway to the sunroom door when the floorboard beneath him creaked a sharp betraying sound in the silent house. From upstairs, the footsteps paused, then quickened, moving toward the stairs. Noah abandoned stealth for speed, sprinting through the sunroom and out onto the back porch. Behind him, a shout went up. He raced across the lawn toward the path that led to the boathouse, the package clutched to his chest like a child. The ocean wind whipped at his clothes, carrying the sound of pursuit. The boathouse stood dark against the morning sky, its weathered boards offering poor shelter. But Noah didn't need shelter, he needed escape. His car was parked on the other side, hidden from the main house. If he could reach it, a figure cut across his path, Harrington moving with surprising speed for a man his age. He must have exited through the kitchen when he heard the commotion. Noah changed direction, veering toward the rocky shoreline instead. Harrington followed, closing the distance. Mr. Russell Harrington called, his polished voice rough with exertion. "Don't make this more difficult than it needs to be." Noah scrambled over rocks slick with sea spray, putting distance between them. Harrington was not dressed for this terrain, his leather shoes slipping on the wet stone. The second man was still coming from the house, too far away to intercept. "This doesn't have to end badly." Harrington continued, more plea than threat now. "We're not here to harm you. We simply need to secure sensitive historical materials. For national security." Noah paused, turning to face him across a tidal pool that separated them. National security, or protecting the reputations of powerful men who planned an assassination 60 years ago? Harrington's face tightened. "You have no idea what you're dealing with. The implications, the potential damage to public trust in institutions. Some truths serve no purpose except destruction. The truth is never destructive." Noah called back, the wind carrying his words across the water. "Only lies are." Mitchell knew that. That's why he preserved the evidence instead of destroying it. He wanted the truth to survive, even if he didn't. Harrington took a step forward, misjudged his footing, and slipped. He caught himself before falling, but the near miss seemed to make him reconsider the pursuit. The second man had reached the shoreline now, but was keeping his distance, awaiting direction. "We can make this beneficial for everyone involved." Harrington tried again. "A financial arrangement, exclusive access for your research, recognition for your discovery within appropriate parameters." Noah understood then that they weren't there to arrest him or silence him, at least not immediately. They wanted to co-opt him, to bring him into their machinery of secrecy and controlled narrative, to make him complicit. He turned away, continuing along the shoreline. Behind him, Harrington gave up the direct pursuit, gesturing for the second man to circle around, perhaps, to cut Noah off further down the coast. But Noah had grown up exploring beaches like this one. He knew how to move on the rocks, where to find the hidden paths that led up to the road. By the time they reorganized, he would be gone. 30 minutes later, Noah sat in his car in the parking lot of the Lighthouse Cafe, heart still racing. The package lay on the seat beside him, its contents intact. He'd escaped for now, but he couldn't go back to the house. Not yet. Perhaps not ever, if Harrington and his associates had decided to drop all pretense of legality. His phone buzzed, a text from Shane. "Where are you? Men looking for you. Said they just want to talk. Call me." Noah didn't respond. He couldn't trust Shane, not after discovering his brother's back-channel communications with Harrington. Instead, he called Walter Green. The old photographer answered on the second ring. "I've been expecting your call," he said without preamble. They came to the shop again, asking more questions about you and the negatives. "I need somewhere to stay," Noah said. "Just for a day or two until I figure out my next step." Green was silent for a moment. "My daughter has a place outside of town. Vacation rental empty until Memorial Day. I'll text you the address and entry code. No one will look for you there." Noah thanked him and hung up, starting the car. As he pulled out of the parking lot, he noticed a familiar truck approaching Shane's, moving too fast, as if in a hurry. Noah turned quickly down a side street, avoiding the encounter. Whatever Shane wanted to tell him, it could wait. Right now, Noah needed distance and time to think. The vacation rental turned out to be a small cottage overlooking the bay, its weathered shingles and blue trim giving it the look of a postcard from simpler times. Noah let himself in with the code Green had provided, relieved to find the place clean and fully furnished. He set the package on the kitchen table and began the careful process of examining each piece of evidence again. The recordings remained the most damning conversations that clearly indicated foreknowledge of what would happen in Dallas discussions of containment and management of variables. Mitchell had captured the planning of an assassination, or at the very least the awareness that one would occur. No wonder he'd disappeared afterward. No wonder powerful forces still sought to suppress what he'd preserved. Noah worked through the afternoon making detailed notes cross-referencing the tapes with historical accounts of Lancaster's final days. The more he uncovered, the clearer the picture became. Mitchell hadn't just witnessed history, he'd witnessed its deliberate manipulation, the construction of a narrative designed to hide uncomfortable truths. As evening approached, Noah's phone buzzed again. This time, it was an email from Dr. Thompson. Mr. Russell, I've received your file and reviewed the transcripts. If authentic, this material is explosive. I've consulted with trusted colleagues in security and law. My strong recommendation is that you place the physical evidence in the hands of multiple trusted individuals immediately. Divide it so no single seizure can suppress everything. I've arranged secure legal representation for you. The attorney's contact information is below. Call from a public phone, not your cell. Mention my name in the phrase Mitchell Archive. Proceed with extreme caution. The men who visited my office have made inquiries about you across the university. They're persistent and well-connected. You were right to preserve this history. Now we must ensure it survives to be told. R.T. Noah read the email twice, then deleted it from his phone. Thompson was right, keeping all the evidence in one place was too risky. He needed to separate it, distribute it to people who would protect it independently. If anything happened to him, the truth would still find its way out. The sun was setting over the bay, painting the water copper and gold, when Noah heard a vehicle approaching. He moved to the window, cautiously expecting to see Harrington's sedan or perhaps a police car. Instead, it was Shane's truck kicking up dust on the unpaved drive. Noah's first instinct was to flee to take the evidence and run before Shane could betray him again. But something in his brother's posture as he emerged from the vehicle gave him pause. Shane moved slowly, shoulders slumped, like a man carrying a burden too heavy to bear. Noah watched as his twin approached the door and knocked tentatively. When there was no answer, Shane called out, his voice carrying through the thin walls. Noah, if you're in there, please. I know I messed up, but you need to hear me out. It's worse than we thought. Noah hesitated, then opened the door, keeping his body positioned to block entry. What do you want, Shane? His brother looked terrible, face drawn, eyes red-rimmed, as if he hadn't slept. The confident, pragmatic Shane was gone, replaced by someone haunted. How did you find me? Noah demanded. Shane's laugh was hollow, humorless. We're twins, Noah. I know how you think. Green's the only person in town you trust. It wasn't hard to figure out you'd go to him for help. His daughter's place was just a guess. The reminder of their connection, the biological bond that had once meant complete trust, made the betrayal sharper. What do you want? Shane's eyes darted past him to the package on the table, then back to Noah's face. Harrington isn't who he says he is. He's not with any foundation. He works for someone else, someone with government connections. After you ran, they stopped pretending. Started making threats instead of offers. Noah studied his brother's face, looking for signs of deception. Why should I believe you now? After you went behind my back, tried to sell them copies of the negatives. Shane flinched as if struck. I was wrong. I thought it was just about money, a simple transaction. But when they came back, when they started talking about national security and sedition charges, his voice broke. I realized this was never about historical artifacts. It's about covering up what's on those tapes. Noah's grip on the door tightened. What exactly did they say to you? Shane looked down, unable to meet his eyes. That if we didn't cooperate, we'd be charged with possession of classified materials. That the evidence would be seized and we'd face federal prosecution. That we'd never work again, never get loans, never live normal lives. They know everything about us, Noah. Dad's medical bills, your journalism career, my business plans. Everything. The extent of the surveillance was chilling, but not surprising. If these people had been protecting this secret for 60 years, they'd have systems in place for situations exactly like this. Shane continued, words tumbling out now. I pretended to cooperate. Told them I'd convince you to turn everything over. But really I needed to warn you. To tell you to get as far away as possible with those recordings. Noah wanted to believe him. Wanted to trust the brother who'd shared every childhood secret, every adolescent fear. But the stakes were too high for blind faith. Prove it, he said simply. Shane reached into his pocket and pulled out a small recording device, the kind journalists use for interviews. I recorded them, he said. After you ran, they didn't notice. I thought you might need evidence of who they really are. Noah took the device cautiously. If Shane was telling the truth, it represented an enormous risk on his part. Recording federal agents making threats was dangerous in itself. He pressed play, and Harrington's smooth voice emerged, though different now, harder, more authoritative. Your brother has made a serious miscalculation, Mr. Russell. These materials fall under national security classification. Their very existence is classified. By possessing them, copying them, attempting to distribute them, you've both violated federal law. The penalties are severe. Another voice, the second man's, chimed in. We're authorized to offer one final opportunity for cooperation. Return all materials, originals and copies. Sign non-disclosure agreements. Provide a complete list of anyone who's viewed or been told about these items. Harrington again. If these terms are met, we can ensure the matter is handled administratively rather than criminally. If not, well, the justice system has many tools for dealing with threats to national security. None of them pleasant. The recording continued detailing specific threats, audit triggers, passport restrictions, placement in security watch lists, charges that would ensure no reputable employer would hire either brother again. It was comprehensive, methodical intimidation by people clearly accustomed to getting their way. Noah stopped the playback, mind racing. Shane had taken an enormous risk recording this conversation. Either he was truly trying to make amends, or this was an elaborate setup, a recording made with Harrington's knowledge to gain Noah's trust. I don't know what to believe anymore. Noah admitted the weight of paranoia pressing down on him. Everyone has an angle. Everyone wants these recordings. Shane stepped closer, his face earnest in the fading light. I know I can't undo what I did. I was wrong about everything. But I'm trying to make it right. His voice dropped to a whisper. They're watching the house, probably watching Green too. You need to get those recordings somewhere safe, somewhere they'll never think to look. Noah studied his twin, this mirror image with whom he shared DNA but increasingly little else. The Shane he'd grown up with had always been practical to the point of callousness, focused on survival rather than ideals. But he'd never been cruel, never malicious. Just afraid of ending up like their mother, cleaning other people's houses. Afraid of ending up like their father, dying in debt. What changed your mind? Noah asked finally. Shane looked out toward the darkening bay, gathering his thoughts. I listened to the tapes while you were gone. Really listened. And I realized this isn't about money or politics or even history. It's about a man who risked everything to preserve the truth, who disappeared, maybe died because he believed people deserved to know what really happened. His gaze returned to Noah, steady now. We can't let him disappear again. We can't let them erase him twice. It was perhaps the most idealistic thing Noah had ever heard his brother say. Whether it was genuine or performance, he couldn't be certain. But in that moment, he chose to believe, because the alternative was to stand alone against forces too powerful to fight as a single person. Come in, Noah said, stepping aside. Let's figure this out together. Inside the cottage, they spread the evidence across the table, the negatives, the tape recordings, Noah's notes, and transcripts. The sun had fully set, now the room illuminated only by a single lamp that cast long shadows across their identical faces. We need to divide it, Noah explained, outlining Thompson's advice. Multiple copies, multiple custodians. If they get to one, the others still exist. Shane nodded, already thinking practically again. I know people in construction across 3 states. Guys who owe me favors, who know how to keep secrets. We can send packages with partial evidence to each of them. Instructions to hold until they hear from us, or to release everything if they don't hear from us by a certain date. It was a good plan, simple, redundant, relying on a network too disparate to be easily tracked or threatened. They worked through the evening, making copies where possible, dividing the original materials into 3 separate packages. One would go with Noah to Thompson and her legal contacts. One would be distributed through Shane's constructions network. The third, containing the most damning recordings, would be hidden somewhere no one would think to look. As midnight approached, they finished their preparations. 3 nondescript packages sat on the table, sealed and addressed. The cottage was silent, except for the distant rhythm of waves against the shore. Shane broke the quiet first. "What do you think really happened to Mitchell after he hid the evidence?" Noah had been asking himself the same question for weeks. "I think he knew too much to stay, but had too much integrity to keep quiet. So he created a record, hid it where it might eventually be found, and then disappeared himself," Shane finished. "Went underground, changed his identity, or was disappeared," Noah corrected softly, "by the same people who are coming after us now." The possibility hung between them, heavy with implication. If Mitchell had been eliminated for what he knew, what chance did they have? Shane rose, stretching muscles stiff from hours of focused work. "I should go. They might be tracking my truck. The longer I stay here, the more danger you're in." Noah nodded, suddenly aware of how exhausted he was. "Be careful. Don't go back to the house tonight." Shane paused at the door, looking back at his brother. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For trying to sell them out, for not understanding why this matters. I was wrong." Noah managed a tired smile. "That might be the first time you've ever admitted that." Shane's answering grin was a flash of their old connection there, and gone in an instant. "Yeah, well, don't get used to it." After he left, Noah secured the packages in a locked cabinet, then stretched out on the cottage's small bed, fully clothed. Despite his exhaustion, sleep eluded him. His mind kept returning to Mitchell, a man who'd witnessed history and refused to let it be rewritten. A man who'd paid an unknown price for that commitment to truth. Somewhere on the road between Cape Harbor and oblivion, Mitchell had made his choice. Now Noah and Shane faced the same decision: point, reveal everything and face the consequences, or hide the truth and hope someone else would find it later. The answer, Noah realized as dawn light began to filter through the curtains, lay somewhere in between. Not total exposure, not complete concealment, but strategic distribution. A virus of truth spreading too widely to be contained. He rose and went to the window, watching as the new day painted the bay in shades of pearl and silver. The same view Mitchell might have had as he made his final preparations 60 years ago. The same ocean that had kept its secrets all this time. Now it was time for those secrets to surface, for the hidden currents of history to finally reach the shore. The morning light slanted through the cottage windows, highlighting dust motes that danced like memories in the golden beams. Noah hadn't slept more than an hour, his mind cycling through possibilities, contingencies, escape routes. The 3 packages sat on the table where they'd left them, physical manifestations of a truth too dangerous to be kept in one place, too important to be destroyed. His phone buzzed with a text from Shane. "Meeting my contacts at noon. Will distribute package number 2 as planned. Stay where you are until I confirm delivery." Noah typed a quick acknowledgement, then set about preparing package number 1 for transport to Dr. Thompson. He would need to move carefully, avoiding main roads and public places where cameras might track his movements. The remaining package, the one containing the most damning recordings, would require special handling. They had decided not to tell each other where this third set of evidence would be hidden. Plausible deniability, Shane had called it. Protection through ignorance. As Noah gathered his belongings, a car door slammed outside. He froze, then moved cautiously to the window. A blue Volvo sat in the driveway, Martha Sullivan's vehicle. The librarian emerged carrying a canvas bag similar to the one she'd brought to their house weeks earlier. Her face was set with determination as she approached the cottage door. Noah let her in, confusion mingling with caution. "How did you find me?" Martha set her bag on a chair, her movements efficient and decisive. "Walter called me. Said you needed a safe place for important materials." Her sharp eyes took in the packages on the table. "I've known about Thomas Mitchell longer than either of you have been alive. I know what he was trying to protect." The revelation shifted Noah's understanding of the quiet librarian. "You knew him?" Martha nodded, a hint of something deeper than professional interest crossing her features. "I was working at the Herald when he disappeared. Junior copy editor, just 20 years old. Thomas used to come by the office selling photographs to our features department. He noticed things other photographers missed, caught moments that told stories beyond the obvious." Her voice softened with memory. "He was kind to me when others weren't. Encouraged me to write, not just edit. She reached into her bag and withdrew an aged leather portfolio. I kept these, against policy, against common sense. But I couldn't let them erase him completely. Inside the portfolio were photographs, originals, not newspaper clippings, all bearing Mitchell's distinctive composition. President Lancaster on multiple occasions, yes, but also ordinary citizens caught in extraordinary moments. A civil rights march, children integrating a school, a veteran weeping at a memorial. I believe Thomas saw something in Dallas. Martha continued, something that contradicted the official narrative. When he returned to Cape Harbor afterward, he was different, frightened but resolved. He came to the Herald, asked to use our darkroom. I helped him. 2 days later, he was gone. His cottage cleared out, no forwarding address. Noah studied her face, searching for deception and finding none. Just a woman who had carried a part of this story for decades, waiting for someone to uncover the rest. You know what's on these tapes, don't you, Noah? Gestured to the packages. Martha's expression remained carefully neutral. I have suspicions. Thomas talked about recording conversations about evidence that would rewrite history if made public. He was preparing to go to a major newspaper with everything he had. Then Dallas happened, and suddenly powerful men were asking questions about a minor photographer no one had paid attention to before. She picked up the smallest package, the one containing the most crucial recordings. This one needs special protection. Somewhere they won't think to look. Noah hesitated. We were planning to, Martha cut him off with a raised hand. The less I know about your plans, the better. But I have a suggestion. Her eyes held a glimmer of the young woman who had defied policy to preserve a missing man's work. The County Historical Society maintains a time capsule program. Items sealed, cataloged under innocuous descriptions, scheduled for opening 25, 50, 100 years later. As head librarian, I oversee the program. No one questions what goes into those capsules. No one inspects them once they're sealed. The simplicity of the plan was its genius. Hide the most damning evidence, not in secret but in plain sight, protected by bureaucracy and the slow march of time. Even if Harrington and his associates suspected the legal barriers to opening a county time capsule before its scheduled date would be formidable, they could secure the future revelation of the truth even if they failed to protect its present exposure. Noah reorganized the packages, giving Martha the recordings that most clearly implicated high-level officials in the planning of the Dallas assassination. She would secure them in a time capsule scheduled for opening in 2063, a century after the events they documented. A fail-safe that ensured the truth would eventually emerge, even if their current efforts were suppressed. By noon, Martha had left with her precious cargo, and Noah prepared to deliver the second set of materials to Dr. Thompson. The final package, containing duplicates of selected recordings and all the photographic negatives, would go with Shane to be distributed through his network of construction contacts across 3 states. Noah checked his phone one last time before departing. No messages from Shane, which was concerning. His brother should have confirmed receipt of the materials by now. Noah sent a text, status update, no immediate response. He was about to call when a new message appeared, not from Shane but from an unknown number. Dr. Thompson compromised. Do not attempt contact. Seek alternative arrangement for materials. Delete this message. The warning sent a chill through Noah. If Thompson's position had been compromised, the entire plan was in jeopardy. He tried calling Shane, but the call went straight to voicemail. Something was wrong. Noah grabbed the remaining package and his car keys. He needed to move to get away from the cottage before whoever had compromised Thompson came looking for him. But where to go? Who could he trust now? The answer came as he was backing out of the driveway. Walter Green. The old photographer had already demonstrated his willingness to help his connection to Mitchell's legacy. If anyone would know how to proceed now, it would be him. Green's shop was closed when Noah arrived, the closed sign hanging in the window despite it being regular business hours. Noah circled around to the back entrance, knocking softly. No response. He tried the door and found it unlocked, unusual for the security-conscious photographer. Noah, his senses heightened by adrenaline, entered cautiously. The darkroom door stood ajar, red safety light spilling into the main space. Green. Noah called softly. Are you here? The shop remained silent, but something felt off. A chair was overturned near the counter. A stack of photo paper had been knocked to the floor. Signs of a struggle or perhaps a hasty departure. Noah moved to the supply cabinet that concealed Green's safe, finding it open, the packages of photo paper strewn about. The safe itself hung open as well, empty. Someone had known exactly where to look, exactly what to find. His phone buzzed a text from Shane's number. "Meet me at the house. Emergency." Noah stared at the message, suspicion blooming. It didn't feel right. Shane knew better than to suggest returning to the house, which was almost certainly under surveillance. And the terse nature of the text didn't match his brother's usual communication style. Another text followed, "Hurry, not safe anywhere else." Noah didn't respond. Instead, he searched Green's shop for any indication of where the photographer might have gone or what might have happened to him. Behind the counter, he found Green's appointment book. The page for today had a single entry: Harbor Point Marina slip, 42 noon. The marina was less than a mile away. Noah left the shop, keeping to side streets and watching for any sign of surveillance. The harbor came into view, the forest of masts and antennas, boats bobbing gently in the protected waters. Slip 42 belonged to an aging cabin cruiser named Second Light. No one appeared to be aboard, but the cabin door was slightly ajar. Noah approached, cautiously scanning the docks for anyone watching. The marina was quiet a Tuesday in early spring, most owners still weeks away from regular use of their vessels. He stepped aboard the cruiser, balancing carefully as it shifted beneath his weight. "Walter," he called softly, pushing the cabin door further open. The interior was dim but tidy, with the lived-in feel of a boat that saw regular use. Seated at the small table was Walter Green, his weathered face drawn with tension. "You shouldn't have come," Green said, gesturing for Noah to sit. "They picked me up this morning, questioned me for 3 hours about you, about the negatives, about Mitchell." Noah's alarm must have shown on his face because Green raised a hand reassuringly. "They didn't arrest me, just applied pressure. Said they knew I was helping you hide classified materials. Threatened to charge me as an accessory." His mouth twisted in a bitter smile. "I'm 82 years old. What are they going to do, give me life?" "What did you tell them?" Noah kept his voice level, though his heart was racing. "Enough to make them think I was cooperating. Nothing that would actually help them find you or the materials." Green studied Noah's face. "But they have your brother." The confirmation of what Noah had feared hit like a physical blow. "They're using his phone to try to lure me in." Green nodded. "They picked him up at a gas station outside town. I overheard them talking about it during my interview. They were quite pleased with themselves, said the brother was the weak link all along." Noah's hand tightened around the package he still carried. "Do you know where they're holding him?" "Some government facility in Boston, I think. They weren't specific." Green rubbed his eyes tiredly. "They're serious people, Noah, with serious resources. This isn't just about protecting reputations anymore. It's about national mythology. The story America tells itself about who killed Lancaster and why." The weight of what they were up against pressed down on Noah. Individuals against institutions, truth against comfortable fiction. But now there was Shane to consider, his twin, his oldest connection to the world, the person who shared his face in history, if not his ideals. "I need to help him." Noah said, the decision forming even as he spoke it. Green's expression grew grave. "They'll be expecting that. It's why they took him as bait for you and the materials. If you walk into their trap, both the truth and your brother are lost." The choice crystallized with painful clarity: the mission or his brother. The truth Mitchell had died to protect, or the twin who had been by his side since birth. How do you measure the value of historical truth against the life of the person who shares your DNA, who once shared your heartbeat? But what if there was a third option? Noah's mind raced, seeking an alternative that would preserve both Shane and the evidence. A way to use Harrington's expectations against him. "I need a secure phone," Noah said, "and a way to reach Boston without being followed." Green studied him, then nodded slowly. "I have a prepaid cell you can use. And my nephew works for a charter boat company. He can get you to Provincetown. From there, you can catch a bus to Boston. No cameras, no ticket in your name." As Green made arrangements by radio, Noah used the prepaid phone to compose an email to a list of journalists Thompson had included in her last communication, trusted reporters at major outlets known for protecting sources and standing up to government pressure. He attached digital copies of selected documents and transcribed portions of the recordings, enough to establish the authenticity of what they'd found without revealing everything. The message was set to send automatically in 24 hours unless canceled with a specific code. Insurance in case his plan to free Shane failed. By late afternoon, Noah was aboard a small fishing boat heading north toward Provincetown. The Captain Green's nephew asked no questions beyond whether Noah was prone to seasickness. The package of evidence remained secure in Noah's backpack, protected in waterproof wrapping in case of emergency. As the Massachusetts coast slid by, Noah thought about Mitchell, the man who had seen the machinery of power from the inside, who had documented its workings, who had ultimately decided that the truth mattered more than his own safety. Had Mitchell anticipated that his evidence would remain hidden for decades? Had he imagined someone like Noah finding it struggling with the same questions of duty and risk? The boat docked in Provincetown just as dusk was falling. Noah thanked the captain and made his way to the bus station, purchasing a ticket to Boston with cash. The bus was half empty, allowing him a row to himself. As the vehicle pulled away from the small coastal town, Noah opened his phone and called the number Harrington had left on his second business card. A woman answered, her voice professionally neutral. Lancaster Foundation. Noah didn't bother with pleasantries. Put me through to Harrington. A pause, then. May I ask who's calling? Tell him it's Noah Russell. And tell him I'm ready to make a deal. The line went silent for almost a minute before Harrington's smooth voice emerged. Mr. Russell, I'm pleased you've come to your senses. I understand you have something we want, and we have something you want. Noah kept his voice steady. My brother goes free unharmed, no charges, no surveillance, and I'll give you the original recordings. All of them. Harrington's chuckle carried a hint of genuine amusement. You're hardly in a position to dictate terms, Mr. Russell. But as it happens, we have no particular interest in your brother beyond his utility in reaching you. A trade might be arranged. Noah had expected this Harrington playing at reasonableness while maintaining the upper hand. I want proof Shane is okay, and I'll need guarantees. Of course, Harrington replied smoothly. Why don't we discuss this in person? I can arrange a meeting tonight somewhere public if that makes you more comfortable. Noah agreed to meet at a hotel restaurant in downtown Boston, public enough to offer some protection, private enough for their conversation. He provided no information about his current location or how he would arrive, only that he would be there at 9 o'clock. The bus reached Boston by 8. Noah took a circuitous route to the hotel, changing taxis twice to shake any potential tail. The restaurant was upscale and dimly lit, half filled with business travelers and couples. Harrington waited at a corner table alone, a glass of amber liquid sitting untouched before him. Noah approached cautiously, scanning the room for men in dark suits for any sign of a trap. He sat across from Harrington, keeping his backpack close. Harrington's practiced smile appeared. Mr. Russell, I appreciate your willingness to be reasonable about this situation. Where's my brother? Noah kept his hands flat on the table, resisting the urge to clench them into fists. Harrington gestured vaguely. In a secure location, unharmed as requested. His expression hardened slightly. Now about those materials you've collected. Noah leaned forward. You get nothing until I see Shane. Free and clear. Harrington studied him, weighing his options. After a moment, he removed a phone from his pocket and made a call, speaking too quietly for Noah to hear the exact words. When he finished, he returned the phone to his pocket. Your brother will be brought here shortly, but understand, Mr. Russell, that we've taken precautions. If you've distributed copies of these materials, if you've arranged for publication, we will know. And the consequences would be significant. The threat hung in the air between them, all the more menacing for its lack of specificity. Noah maintained eye contact, refusing to be intimidated. I'm curious, he said after a moment. How did you find out about the recordings so quickly? We only discovered them a few weeks ago. Harrington smiled thinly. We monitor certain search terms, certain types of inquiries. Your article about Mitchell flagged our systems. Once we identified that property involved the same house where Mitchell stayed before his disappearance, it was a simple matter to connect the dots. The casual admission of surveillance was chilling. These people had been guarding their secret for 60 years, maintaining systems to detect and neutralize any threat to the official narrative about Lancaster's assassination. Mitchell had never stood a chance. Neither perhaps had Noah and Shane. And what happened to Mitchell? Noah asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Harrington shrugged, the gesture almost elegant in its dismissiveness. Mr. Mitchell made a choice to remove himself from a situation that had become untenable. We merely facilitated his preference for a new identity, a new life far from the complications he'd encountered. The sanitized language couldn't disguise the reality Mitchell had either been eliminated or forced to disappear. His life's work buried, his witness silenced. Until now. The restaurant door opened and Shane entered, flanked by two men whose bland appearances couldn't quite disguise their alertness, their readiness for trouble. Shane's face was pale, his expression strained, but he appeared physically unharmed. When he saw Noah, relief flooded his features. Harrington gestured to the empty chair beside him. "Mr. Russell, please join us." Shane sat his movements stiff. "You okay?" he asked Noah, eyes searching his brother's face. Noah nodded slightly. Shane's attempt at a reassuring smile fell flat. "Been better. These guys aren't big on hospitality." Harrington cleared his throat, reclaiming control of the conversation. "Now that we've established everyone's well-being, let's proceed. The materials, Mr. Russell." Noah placed his backpack on the table. Inside is a complete set of the recordings we found in the house. The originals. His gaze shifted to Shane. And in exchange, my brother walks away. No charges, no harassment, no black mark on his record. Harrington reached for the bag, but Noah held it firmly. "One more condition. When this is over, the house belongs to us free and clear. No tax issues, no liens, no claims against the property." Harrington raised an eyebrow. "The house is hardly of interest to us now that its contents have been secured." He nodded. "Agreed. The property remains with you, all encumbrances resolved." Noah slid the backpack across the table. Harrington opened it, examining the contents with careful hands. The tapes were there neatly labeled, along with the reel-to-reel recorder itself. "You've made the right decision," Mr. Russell Harrington said, closing the bag. "Some truths serve no purpose except to damage public faith in institutions. The American people need their heroes untarnished, their history clear and inspiring." He signaled to the men standing nearby. "My associates will escort your brother out. You're both free to go, provided our agreement stands." Noah rose, Shane following suit. As they walked toward the exit, Harrington called after them. "Oh, and Mr. Russell, both of you would be wise to put this entire matter behind you. Find another story to tell, another cause to champion, for your own well-being." The threat was unmistakable despite the pleasant delivery. Noah said nothing, guiding his brother through the restaurant and out into the cool Boston night. They walked several blocks in silence, putting distance between themselves and the hotel before Shane finally spoke. "Did you really just give them everything after all this?" His voice carried equal measures of disbelief and disappointment. Noah kept walking, eyes scanning the street for any sign of surveillance. "Not here, we need somewhere private." They found a small park, deserted at this hour except for a homeless man sleeping on a distant bench. Noah led Shane to a secluded corner beneath a flowering dogwood tree, its white blossoms luminous in the darkness. "I gave them recordings," Noah said once they were settled. "Not Mitchell's originals. Copies I made mixed with recordings of Shane strumming his guitar, both of us having mundane conversations about house repairs. Nonsense, essentially, with just enough fragments of the real tapes to seem authentic on initial inspection." Shane stared at him. "You switched them when after I found out they had you. I figured they'd want to verify the recordings immediately, which meant I needed something that would pass a quick inspection but fall apart under real analysis. By the time they realize they've been given fakes, the real evidence will be secure. But where are the actual recordings?" Shane's eyes widened in sudden understanding. "Martha's time capsule. They'll never think to look there." Noah nodded. "And other copies are with Green's contacts up and down the coast. Plus, I've set up a dead man's switch in email to 20 journalists with sample recordings and authentication details set to send automatically if I don't cancel it within 24 hours. He smiled grimly. "Even if Harrington's people grab us again, the truth gets out." Shane let out a long breath, something like admiration crossing his features. "And the negatives, the photographs, those are on their way to the Kennedy Library archives as we speak. Anonymous donation, proper documentation." By the time Harrington realizes the recordings are fake, Mitchell's photographs will already be cataloged in the National Archives, too public to disappear. The brothers sat in silence for a moment, the weight of what they'd done, what they'd risked, what they'd preserved settling around them. The truth that had cost Mitchell his freedom, possibly his life, would finally see the light of day. Not all at once, perhaps, but in stages. First, the photographs establishing Mitchell's presence and legitimacy, then selected a recordings released through trusted journalists, and finally, decades from now, the full archive emerging from Martha's time capsule. They couldn't undo what had happened in Dallas in 1963. They couldn't bring Mitchell back or erase the 60 years of deception that followed, but they could ensure that history eventually would include the full story. "What happens now?" Shane asked finally. "Now we go home," Noah replied. "Back to the house, back to our lives." He glanced at his brother. "Though I don't think Harrington and his people are done with us yet. Once they realize they've been tricked." Shane nodded grimly. "We should be prepared. Set up some insurance, some way to sound the alarm if they come for us again." Their conversation continued as they walked toward the bus station, planning defense strategies, communication systems, ways to protect themselves without surrendering the truth they'd uncovered. The bond between them, strained by Shane's earlier betrayal, had been forged anew in the crucible of shared danger. The bus ride back to Cape Harbor passed in exhausted silence, both brothers drifting in and out of uneasy sleep. Dawn was breaking as they pulled into the small coastal town, the familiar streets bathed in pale gold light that made everything look deceptively peaceful. They retrieved Shane's truck from where he'd left it before his capture and drove the final miles to the house. As they approached, both tents scanning for signs of surveillance or intrusion. But the property appeared undisturbed, the morning calm broken only by the distant cry of gulls. Inside, however, was a different story. The house had been searched thoroughly professionally with a coldness that left no drawer unopened, no hiding place unexplored. The damage wasn't immediately obvious. Whoever had conducted the search had been careful to replace the items to maintain the appearance of normalcy. But to the brothers who had lived there for months, the disturbance was unmistakable. "They're looking for anything we might have kept back," Shane said, surveying the subtle disarray of the study. "Any copies or notes they didn't know about?" Noah nodded, moving from room to room, cataloging the invasion. The fireplace in the study where he'd hidden the original negatives had been excavated, the bricks removed and carefully replaced. The hidden room in the basement stood open, its meager contents strewn across the floor. Even the floorboards in certain rooms had been pried up and replaced, the work so professional it was barely noticeable. The search extended to the grounds as well. The caretaker's cottage where Uncle Robert had lived showed signs of similar examination. The boathouse had been virtually dismantled, its boards removed and replaced by experts who left minimal evidence of their work. They were looking for anything Mitchell might have hidden, Noah realized. Any trace of evidence beyond what we found. Did they find anything? Shane wondered aloud. Noah shrugged. "If they did, we'll probably never know, but I doubt it. Mitchell was thorough in hiding what he preserved, but he wouldn't have scattered evidence across the property. Too risky, too easy to discover accidentally." By midday, they had confirmed that the house, while violated, was structurally sound. No listening devices, no cameras, no obvious traps, just the lingering sense of intrusion of privacy destroyed. They worked in silence, restoring order where it had been disrupted, reclaiming their space inch by inch. As evening approached, Noah's phone buzzed, the prepaid one Green had given him, not his personal device. The message was from Dr. Thompson. "Authentication confirmed. Materials secure. Publication pending legal review. Be careful." The simple text represented a significant victory. The photographs had been verified, the partial recordings authenticated. The machinery of revelation had been set in motion, and while it might take months or even years for the full story to emerge, Mitchell's truth would not remain buried. Noah showed the message to Shane, whose face broke into a weary smile. "So we won," he said softly. "At least round one." Noah nodded, though his expression remained solemn. "But at what cost? Harrington and his people won't just accept defeat. They've been guarding this secret for 60 years. They'll try to discredit the evidence, discredit us. They might come after us directly." Shane's jaw set with determination. "Let them try. We're ready now. We know what we're up against." The brothers spent the evening preparing, copying important documents to secure locations, establishing communication protocols, creating contingency plans. If Harrington's people came for them again, they would not be caught unprepared. As midnight approached, Noah found himself standing on the porch, looking out at the ocean, silvered by moonlight. The same view Mitchell had contemplated 60 years earlier, weighing truth against safety principles, against survival. Had he known, as he hid his evidence and prepared to flee, that decades would pass before his witness would be heard? Had he imagined two brothers not yet born standing in his footsteps? Shane joined him, offering a mug of coffee. "I've been thinking about what happens next." His voice was quiet, reflective. "We can't just go back to our old lives, can we?" Noah shook his head. "Not entirely. Once the story breaks, once Mitchell's evidence becomes public, we'll be part of it, whether we want to be or not." Shane leaned against the railing. "So what do we do with this place? Sell it and disappear? Stay and turn it into some kind of historical site?" The question had been lurking in Noah's mind as well. The house was no longer just property. It was a witness, a repository of history that had nearly been lost forever. Its walls had sheltered secrets. Its hidden spaces preserved truth. To sell it now, to surrender it to new owners who might know nothing of its significance, felt wrong. "I think we honor it," Noah said finally. "Preserve what happened here. Not as a museum necessarily, but as a place where the story can be told completely. Mitchell deserves that. The truth deserves that." Shane considered this, then nodded slowly. It would take work, money too, but he smiled, a hint of his old pragmatic self emerging. "I know some contractors." The following weeks unfolded with tense expectation. Noah and Shane continued restoring the house, but now with a new purpose, not just making it livable, but preserving its historical significance. The hidden room in the basement was carefully stabilized and maintained. The study where Mitchell had worked was restored using period-appropriate materials. They were not creating a shrine, but acknowledging a legacy. A month after their confrontation with Harrington, the first story broke, a careful, meticulously sourced article in a major newspaper about Thomas Mitchell, the forgotten photographer who had documented Lancaster's final days. It included several of the photographs Noah had sent to the Kennedy Library, officially attributed to Mitchell. The article mentioned his mysterious disappearance after the assassination, but made no claims about conspiracy or cover-up. It simply established Mitchell as a legitimate historical figure whose work deserved recognition. Harrington called the day the article was published. Noah let it go to voicemail, listening to the message later with Shane beside him. Mr. Russell Harrington's voice was controlled but tight with anger. "I see you've chosen a difficult path. I had hoped we could resolve this situation amicably. Unfortunately, you've forced us to consider other approaches. This is your final opportunity to cease this misguided crusade before irreparable damage is done to historical understanding, to public trust, and potentially to your own future prospects." Noah deleted the message without responding. 2 days later, a second article appeared in a different publication, this one detailing Mitchell's habit of audio recording as well as photographing. It quoted from a recently discovered journal that mentioned Mitchell's concern about conversations he had overheard during Lancaster's final week. The article was careful, making no direct accusations, simply raising questions about what Mitchell might have documented. Harrington's people responded with a press release from the Lancaster Historical Foundation, dismissing the claims as sensationalism, questioning the authenticity of the supposed journal, and suggesting that Mitchell's disappearance was simply a personal choice to leave public life. They offered no explanation for why his press credentials had been purged from White House records or why his photographs had never been published. The dance continued for months. Revelation followed by denial, evidence countered by skepticism. Noah worked with Dr. Thompson and her legal team, releasing information, strategically building a case that became increasingly difficult to dismiss. Mitchell's photographs appeared in exhibitions. Excerpts from the recordings, carefully selected to protect sources still working through the authentication process, were played at academic conferences. Harrington's attempts at intimidation grew more direct. Tax audits were initiated against both brothers. Old parking tickets mysteriously reappeared in the system. Professional contacts suddenly became unavailable. But with each new pressure tactic, Noah and Shane adapted, documented the harassment, added it to the growing body of evidence that powerful forces were attempting to suppress Mitchell's truth. A year after discovering the photographs in the old trunk, Noah stood in what had once been the hidden room in the basement. The space had been carefully preserved but made accessible. Its purpose explained by a simple plaque: Thomas Mitchell's Listening Post, 1963. From this space, Mitchell documented conversations that changed American history. The house itself had been transformed not into a museum exactly, but into a kind of living archive. The Mitchell Center for Photographic Truth, they called it. A place where journalists, historians, and photography students could work and study, examining not just Mitchell's legacy, but the broader questions of visual evidence and historical narrative. Shane had overseen the restoration, applying his practical skills to preserve the building's character while making it functional for its new purpose. Noah had focused on the archival side, working with Thompson and other historians to contextualize Mitchell's work within the larger story of Lancaster's presidency and assassination. The threat from Harrington's organization hadn't disappeared, likely never would, but it had evolved from active suppression to grudging accommodation. The full recordings remain secure in Martha's time capsule scheduled for opening in 2063. The photographs and partial transcripts that had already been made public were enough to raise serious questions about the official narrative without directly exposing the government officials implicated in the conspiracy. It was an uneasy truce, but one that allowed Mitchell's truth to survive, to enter the historical record, to resist erasure. On the anniversary of their discovery, Noah and Shane hosted a small gathering at the house. Martha Sullivan was there, more frail now, but still sharp-eyed and determined. Walter Green came with his nephew, the captain, who had helped Noah escape to Provincetown. Dr. Thompson arrived with several colleagues from the historical community. Even a few journalists attended, those who had helped bring Mitchell's story to light. As evening fell, they gathered on the porch, glasses raised in a toast. Not to victory, for the battle for historical truth was never truly won, but to persistence, to the stubborn refusal to let uncomfortable facts be buried. Later, after the guests had departed, the brothers remained on the porch, watching the same ocean Mitchell had gazed upon 60 years earlier, as he made his fateful choice to preserve the truth regardless of personal cost. "You think he'd be satisfied with how this turned out?" Shane asked, his voice quiet in the gathering darkness. "Mitchell, I mean." Noah considered the question. "Not satisfied exactly. The full truth still isn't public. The people who planned what happened in Dallas haven't been held accountable. Most are dead now anyway. The official narrative still stands, even if it's been questioned." He looked out at the horizon where sea met sky in a line too clean to be real. But his witness survived. His evidence exists in the historical record. He wasn't completely erased. Maybe that's the best anyone can hope for when fighting forces this powerful, not total victory, but refusing to be silenced. Shane nodded slowly. "And what about us? Are we satisfied?" Noah glanced at his brother, this mirror image, who had chosen a different path at first, but had ultimately stood beside him when it mattered most. "I can live with it," he said simply. Behind them, the house stood silent but not empty, its walls containing not just the evidence they discovered, but the story of that discovery itself. The Mitchell Center would continue their work long after they were gone, preserving not just one man's witness, but the larger truth about how history is written, contested, sometimes buried, but never completely erased, when those who care about truth refuse to look away. As the stars emerged above the Atlantic, Noah thought about Mitchell one final time, not as a historical figure or a martyr to truth, but as a man who had stood where he now stood, who had made his choice and lived or died with the consequences. Their paths had crossed across decades, strangers connected by a shared commitment to bearing witness. In the distance, a light appeared on the horizon, a ship passing in the night, its presence marked only by a small moving star against the darkness. Like truth itself, Noah thought. Sometimes hidden, sometimes distant, but always there for those with the patience and courage to see it.